The twin moons of Arthan 5 hung quietly in the night sky, their pale light slipping through the tall windows of Captain Evan Cross's quarters. The human officer had only arrived a few days ago, sent as part of a peace program to help rebuild the alien capital after the war. The palace where he stayed was ancient, filled with strange symbols and quiet servants who always bowed but never spoke. To them, humans were rare, dangerous, unpredictable, and mysterious. Evan sat by the small metal table, cleaning the dust from his data tablet. The night was silent, too silent for a place that never slept. He thought about how the guards stared at him every time he walked through the halls. He could feel it, the distrust, the unspoken fear. Humans had fought these aliens once, and even though peace was signed, the old wounds were still open. Then, without warning, the door to his quarters slid open with a soft hiss. Evan turned sharply. 2 alien women stepped in, both wearing simple silver uniforms that shimmered under the light. They looked young, maybe in their early 20s by human guess. Their eyes were large with glowing golden rings that seemed to move slightly when they blinked. Their skin was pale blue, almost translucent, and their hair, a soft shade of violet, fell over their shoulders. They froze when they saw him awake. One of them gasped softly and lowered her head. Evan stood slowly, confused. "Who are you? Why are you in my room?" he asked, keeping his voice calm but firm. The taller one bowed deeply. "Forgive us, Captain Cross," she said softly. "We were told to begin our service tonight. We are your new attendants," Evan frowned. "At this hour?" The shorter girl, who seemed nervous and shy, clutched a small basket to her chest. We didn't mean to disturb you," she said, her voice trembling. "We were ordered by the steward to prepare your room for the next cycle." He studied them quietly. Something about their movements didn't feel right. They were too careful, too afraid. "It's fine," he said at last. "But next time, knock first." The 2 nodded quickly and stepped inside, beginning to tidy the already clean room. They moved in silence, their delicate fingers brushing over the metal surfaces, their eyes darting toward him whenever he looked away. Evan noticed the younger one drop something near the foot of his bed, a small metallic charm with strange patterns carved into it. When he leaned down to pick it up, she froze. "That's mine," she whispered quickly, her voice filled with panic. Evan handed it back without question, but as she took it, he saw her hands trembling. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly. "I don't harm people." The girl glanced up for a second, her golden eyes wide and uncertain, then quickly looked away again. "We are not afraid," she said, but her tone betrayed her. The taller maid finished arranging his sheets and nodded politely. "We will leave now, Captain. Rest well." They left as suddenly as they came, the door closing behind them with a faint click. Evan stood there for a long time, staring at the quiet room. The scent of their perfume, faintly floral but metallic, still lingered in the air. He sat down again, uneasy. Something about their visit didn't add up. He picked up his tablet to record a note about the incident, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the younger maid's eyes. Those eyes carried more than fear. They carried guilt. Hours later, just as he began to drift into sleep, a faint sound reached his ears, the soft creak of the door sliding open again. He opened his eyes halfway but didn't move. 2 shadows slipped inside, the same maids. He could hear their whispers. "He's asleep," one said. "Don't look at him," the other hissed. "Just finish the scan and go." A soft humming filled the air. Evan's instincts sharpened, like that was no cleaning tool. He watched through half-open eyes as the younger maid hesitated near his bed, holding a small glowing device. The light from it fell across his bare shoulder and she gasped softly. "He's different," she whispered, voice trembling. "His skin, it's not marked." "Stop staring," the other whispered urgently. "They said no talking." "Just record it." Evan stayed still, heart pounding. The word record echoed in his head. What were they scanning? Why was his human body such a shock to them? Then at a metallic clink, the younger maid dropped the same charm again. This time they panicked and rushed out. The charm rolled under his bed, glowing faintly red. Evan sat up slowly after they left, the night completely silent again. He bent down, picked up the charm, and turned it in his fingers. A strange symbol pulsed softly on its surface, a crimson mark shaped like a serpent biting its tail. He didn't know it yet, But that small symbol would soon change everything, for him, for the maids, and for the entire planet. The morning light crept slowly through the tall glass panels of Evan's quarters, cutting across the metallic floor like golden blades. He hadn't slept all night. The strange visit from the maids kept replaying in his mind, the fear in their eyes, the trembling of their hands, and that glowing red charm that now sat quietly on his table. Evan stared at it again. The small disc pulsed faintly as if alive. Every few seconds a faint hum came from it, almost like a heartbeat. He tried scanning it with his wrist device, but the tablet refused to identify it. The message simply flashed. Classified sigil, royal access only. That made his stomach tighten. Only the royal guard or secret council used such sigils. Why would two simple maids carry something like this? He was still thinking when a knock echoed through the room. He stood quickly, hiding the charm under a metal cup before saying, "Enter." The door slid open and the two alien maids stepped in again. Both pale, both silent. But this time their faces looked even more frightened than last night. The taller one spoke first, her voice weak. "Forgive us, Captain Cross. We came to finish what we could not yesterday." Evan gave a small nod but didn't take his eyes off them. "You came into my room at midnight," he said softly. "Without orders, and you carried something you shouldn't have." The younger maid, Liara, froze. Her eyes darted toward the table where she clearly noticed the missing charm. We dropped something," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Evan leaned against the table, studying her face. "Something dangerous?" "No," she said quickly, "just personal." Their fear didn't make sense. They weren't just afraid of punishment, they were afraid of him, or maybe of what might happen if they spoke. "Sit," Evan said, his tone calm but firm. "You both seem nervous. Tell me the truth. Who gave you that device?" The taller maid looked ready to cry. "We cannot say. We will be punished if we do." Evan's voice softened. "If someone sent you here to harm me, you should tell me now." "I can protect you." That word, protect, made Liara flinch. She looked up suddenly, her golden eyes wide and wet. "No one can protect us," she whispered. "Not even a human." Then she turned to leave, dragging her sister with her. But before they could exit, the door opened again from the outside. Two royal guards entered, their black armor glinting like obsidian. "Captain Cross," one of them said coldly, "the steward wishes to inspect your quarters. We received a report of unauthorized items." Evan's heart raced. Someone had already reported the incident. He forced a calm expression. "You're welcome to search," he said. The guards began scanning the room with their glowing staffs. One of them approached the table just inches away from the cup hiding the charm. Liara's hand trembled visibly. Evan saw it and acted fast. He stepped forward, knocking over a tray of tools. The loud crash made everyone flinch. "Sorry," he said quickly. "Gravity on this planet still gets me." The guard glared at him but turned away, annoyed. After a few moments, they finished scanning. "All clear," one said coldly. "If you find anything unusual, report it immediately." As they left, the taller maid whispered something in her alien language, her voice cracking with emotion. Evan couldn't understand the words, but he caught the tone. It was despair. When the door finally closed again, silence filled the room. The maid stood frozen, breathing hard. Evan slowly lifted the cup and held up the glowing charm between his fingers. "Is this what they were looking for?" he asked quietly. Liara's eyes widened in horror. "Please," she begged, "hide it. If they find it with you, they will kill you." "Why?" Evan demanded. Her lips trembled. "That mark. It belongs to the Serpent Court, the Assassins of the Crown." The name sent a chill through the air. Even Evan, an outsider, had heard the rumors, whispers of a secret group that erased enemies of the royal family without a trace. "Then why was it in my room?" he asked, voice low. Liara's tears finally fell. "Because we were ordered to put it there," she confessed. "They wanted it to look like you were planning something against the throne." Evan froze. The setup was clear. A single royal sigil in his room was enough to accuse him of treason and end the fragile peace treaty between humans and their kind. Liara fell to her knees, shaking. "We didn't want to do it," she cried. "They said they would hurt my sister if I refused." Evan knelt down beside her. His voice was quiet but steady. "You did the right thing by telling me. But now we're all in danger." Outside, faint sirens began to echo through the palace halls. Someone had already discovered the missing sigil. Evan looked toward the door, then at the trembling maids. From now on, he said softly, you stay with me. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Liara lifted her eyes, still filled with fear, but also something new. Hope. And far beyond the palace walls, under the rising red sun, shadows began to move. The Serpent Court had realized their plan had failed. And they were coming. The sirens faded with the first light of dawn, but the palace did not rest. Patrols doubled. Drones scanned every corridor. The peace of the alien capital was gone, replaced by whispers of treason and fear. Captain Evan Cross stood by the window of his quarters, staring down at the city's shining spires. He had seen many worlds, many governments built on lies, but this one felt different. Here, truth was dangerous. Behind him, the two maids sat quietly on the floor. Liara's hands were clasped tightly together, while her sister Myron stared at the door, ready to run at the smallest sound. Neither spoke for a long time. The glow of the red sigil still pulsed faintly under a sheet of metal hidden from view. Evan finally turned around. You said this mark belongs to the Serpent Court, he said, his voice calm but cold. Tell me everything you know, Liara looked down. We don't know much. No one does. They wear masks and work for the highest families. When the Royal Council wants someone gone, the Serpent Court makes it happen. No questions. No trials. And they ordered you to frame me, Evan said. Myron nodded shakily. We had no choice. They said if we failed, they'd... She stopped herself, her voice breaking. Evan understood. He didn't press further. Instead, he reached for his wrist tablet and began typing quickly. If the Serpent Court planted false evidence on me, they've done it before. Maybe I can find a pattern in the reports. Liara's eyes widened. You'll investigate them? That's suicide. Even the royal guards fear their name. Evan smiled faintly. Humans fear many things, but not the truth. He connected to the palace data network through his encrypted link. Lines of alien text flickered across his screen. The security logs, the staff records, even the servant registry. He read through them fast, translating the code into human script. Then he froze. There, he said, pointing at the display. 3 servants assigned to the royal wing last week. All disappeared the next day. Their files were deleted. Myron covered her mouth. That's them. The ones who refused to work for the Serpent Court, they were taken away. Taken where? Evan asked. Liara's voice dropped to a whisper. The lower chambers. No one comes back from there. Evan looked at them both, his jaw tightening. Then that's where I'll start. He reached for his jacket, sliding the plasma pistol into its hidden holster. Liara stood up quickly. You can't go there alone. The guards will kill you. He turned, meeting her golden eyes. If I do nothing, we all die anyway. Someone needs to expose this lie before it spreads. Liara hesitated. Her heart raced. She wanted to stop him, to hide, to forget. But deep inside, something told her this human was different. He wasn't like the cold commander she had seen in the palace halls. His courage felt real, warm, steady, and terrifying at the same time. Finally, she stepped forward. Then I'm going with you, her sister gasped. Liara, no. Evan shook his head. You don't have to, but Liara stood firm. I started this. I'll finish it. Evan sighed but didn't argue. He handed her a small device from his belt. A cloaking patch. Press this to your arm when we move. It'll hide your body heat for a few minutes. Stay close. They left the quarters quietly, blending with the morning crowd of servants. Every step down the spiral corridors brought them closer to danger. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The marble floors turned to black metal. The faint sound of machinery echoed through the tunnels. At last they reached a sealed door marked with the royal crest. 2 guards stood nearby. Evan whispered, Wait here. He stepped forward, his uniform and rank giving him authority. Inspection order, he said, holding up a forged command seal on his wrist tablet. The guards hesitated, scanning it. Proceed, one finally said. Evan entered the chamber, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. What he saw made him freeze. Rows of cells lined the walls, each containing weak, frightened figures. Servants, workers, even children. The Serpent Court's forgotten victims. He turned back toward Liara. You were right, he whispered. They've been silencing witnesses for years. Suddenly, an alarm blared again, this time louder, closer. Liara's face went pale. They know we're here. Red lights flashed through the hallways. Evan grabbed her hand. Run! They sprinted down the corridor, boots pounding against the floor. Behind them, armored footsteps closed in. Energy bolts scorched the walls. Liara stumbled and Evan pulled her back to her feet, shielding her with his own body as a blast hit near his shoulder. He winced but kept going. "Keep moving!" Finally, they reached an air vent at the end of the hall. Evan forced it open, pushing Liara through. "Go. What about you?" She shouted. "I'll cover you," he yelled back. As she crawled into the tunnel, tears filled her eyes. Through the flashing red light, she saw him turn, standing tall, weapon drawn, facing the soldiers of the Serpent Court alone. For a moment, the human and the aliens locked eyes through the smoke. Then the blast doors slammed shut, cutting the world in half. Liara's breath shook as she whispered to herself, "He's not like the others. He's different." And far behind her in the darkness, Captain Evan Cross prepared to fight, one man against an empire built on lies. The palace was silent again. But it was not peace, it was the silence before a storm. After the chaos in the lower chambers, every corridor was under guard. The Serpent Court had sealed the entrances, erased the logs, and declared Captain Evan Cross missing in action. The official story said he had returned to orbit, but Liara knew the truth. She sat in her small servant's room, hands shaking as she stared at the glowing mark on her wrist. It was the tracking tag the Serpent Court forced on her when she joined the palace staff. She had tried to burn it off. It wouldn't come off. Her heart ached with guilt. Evan had risked his life for her sister, and now he was probably imprisoned or worse. The wind outside whispered softly against the window. It was almost midnight when she heard it, 3 faint knocks. Not on her door, but inside the vent behind her bed. She froze. Slowly, she pulled off the panel and a small blinking device rolled out. A voice came from it, calm, human, familiar. "Liara, if you're hearing this, I'm alive." Her heart leaped. It was Evan. She pressed the device close. "I escaped the lower cells," his voice continued, low and tired. "I can't stay long. They're hunting me. Meet me where the gardens touch the east wall, 1 hour after midnight. Don't tell anyone." Liara's hands trembled, but her eyes hardened. She threw her cloak over her shoulders and slipped into the dark halls. Myron begged her not to go, whispering, "They'll kill you if they find you." Liara turned back once. "He saved us, Myron. Now I save him." The palace corridors were empty, lit only by blue lanterns that flickered softly like trapped ghosts. Every sound, every footstep felt too loud. She passed the sleeping quarters of nobles, the kitchens, the servant tunnels, until finally she reached the garden wall. There he was. Evan stood in the shadows, his uniform torn, one sleeve burned, a cut running down his cheek. But he was alive. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I've been worse," he said with a small smile. "But we don't have much time. They're planning something big." "What do you mean?" she asked, stepping closer. Evan took a deep breath. "The Serpent Court isn't just a secret faction. They control the Royal Council. They've been using the palace to trade human technology to black markets. The whole peace treaty is a lie. They're building weapons using human DNA." Liara gasped. "That's impossible." "I saw it," he said firmly. "They have labs beneath the old vaults. They're experimenting on human tissue samples taken from captured soldiers years ago. They're trying to make hybrids, creatures strong like humans but loyal to the crown." Her stomach turned. She looked at him, horrified. "Why tell me this?" "What can I do?" "Because you still work for them," Evan said quietly. "You can get into places I can't, and because—" He hesitated. "You care?" Liara's golden eyes shimmered in the moonlight. "You risked your life for me, why?" Evan looked at her for a long moment, then said simply, "Because it was right." There was silence between them, heavy and full. The wind moved gently through the silver leaves. Liara took a small step closer. "Humans are strange," she whispered. "You fight for people who are not your kind." He gave a tired smile. "Maybe that's what makes us human." Before she could reply, the sound of boots echoed nearby. She grabbed his arm, eyes wide. "Guards, you have to go." "No," Evan said firmly. "We go together." They ran through the dark gardens, dodging the light beams of searching drones. The air shimmered with the hum of engines above, patrol ships circling. As they reached a side gate, Liara pressed her hand to the scanner. "This leads to the servant tunnels." "It's unguarded. Will they follow?" Evan asked. "Always," she whispered. The door slid open and they slipped inside. The tunnel was narrow and cold. In the distance, water dripped rhythmically, echoing like a slow heartbeat. Evan finally stopped, catching his breath. "Liara," he said quietly, "what made you work for them? You're too kind for this place." She lowered her head. "My mother was sick. The Serpent Court promised to heal her if we joined the palace service. They lied. She died and we stayed. Because if we left, they'd call us traitors." Evan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then we'll end this. No one should live in fear." She looked up at him, her voice breaking. "You talk as if it's easy." He shook his head. "It's not easy. It's just necessary." Liara stepped closer again, eyes shining in the dim light. "Then I'll help you. Whatever happens, I won't run anymore." From somewhere above, alarms started blaring again, the third time in 2 nights. The palace was waking up. Evan pulled his hood over his head. "They've found my signal. We need to move before dawn." As they ran deeper into the tunnels, their shadows stretched across the stone walls. Side by side, human and alien, both hunted, both bound by the same choice. And as they vanished into the darkness, a new rumor began to spread across the city. A human officer had defied the Serpent Court, and an alien maid had betrayed her masters to follow him. No one knew it yet, but this single act of defiance would soon spark a fire the palace could never contain. The tunnels stretched endlessly beneath the palace, a maze of shadows and whispering pipes. The air was cold, heavy with metal and dust. Evan moved silently beside Liara, his flashlight slicing through the darkness. His body ached from wounds he hadn't treated, but his mind was clear, focused. Tonight they were not just hiding. They were going to take someone back. Liara's sister, Myron, was still trapped in the lower cells, where the Serpent Court kept their witnesses. It wasn't a prison. It was a place where truth was erased. Liara walked close to Evan, her hands clutching a small device he had given her, a signal jammer from his ship. "Once we activate this," Evan said quietly, "their sensors will go blind for 10 minutes. That's all the time we'll get." Liara nodded, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. 10 minutes, she whispered. "We'll find her." They stopped near a sealed hatch guarded by 2 armored sentries. Evan studied their armor, black with silver marks shaped like coiled serpents, the symbol of the court. He turned to Liara. "Stay here." Before she could protest, he stepped into the open, moving with calm confidence. The guards turned sharply, weapons raised. "You, stop right there." Evan lifted his hand slowly. "Easy," he said, his voice calm. "I'm Captain Cross, Human Division. I was ordered to deliver a report." One of the guards scowled. "At this hour?" Evan smiled faintly. "The Serpent Court doesn't sleep, does it?" The guard hesitated, just long enough. Evan moved. His hand struck the nearest one's weapon aside, and his other fist crashed into the second's helmet. In 3 seconds, both were on the ground, unconscious. Liara ran to him, eyes wide. "How did you—" He wiped the sweat from his brow. "Human training? Don't tell anyone." They dragged the guards into a corner and opened the hatch. Inside, the air was colder, darker. The hum of energy fields vibrated through the walls. Rows of transparent cells lined the corridor, each holding prisoners with hollow eyes and silent mouths. Liara pressed her hands to the glass, searching each face. Then she saw her, Myron, lying weakly against the wall, her skin pale, breathing shallow. "There!" Liara cried softly. "That's her." Evan rushed to the control panel beside the cell. The interface was in alien code, but he quickly traced the logic pattern. "Hold on." His fingers flew over the keys. "They changed the locks, but I can override." Suddenly, a voice echoed down the corridor. "Step away from that cell, human." They both froze. A tall figure appeared at the far end of the hall, cloaked in silver, face hidden behind a mask shaped like a serpent's head. The air seemed to darken around him. Evan stood protectively in front of Liara. "You must be one of the Serpent Court." The figure's voice was smooth and cold. "You have no idea what you've done, Captain. That girl belongs to us." Evan's jaw tightened. "She belongs to no one." The masked figure raised a hand. Energy crackled in the air, forming a bolt of light. Evan shoved Liara aside and rolled as the bolt hit the floor, exploding in a flash. He drew his plasma pistol and fired. The shot hit the wall near the figure, who moved like smoke, fast, inhumanly fast. "Run!" Evan shouted. Liara hesitated, torn between fear and love for her sister. But Myron's weak eyes met hers from behind the cell wall, silently begging her to go. Evan's voice cut through the chaos. "Liara, the control now!" She turned and slammed her hand on the panel. Sparks flew as the system overloaded. The cell door slid open and Myron collapsed into her arms. "Got her!" Liara cried. The masked figure hissed in fury, summoning another bolt. Evan fired again, aiming low this time. The blast hit a power conduit. The corridor burst into smoke and flame. "Move!" Evan yelled. Liara dragged her sister, half carrying her as Evan covered them. The explosion tore through the lower level, throwing sparks into the air. They stumbled through the hatch, slamming it shut just as the fire roared behind them. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Only the sound of their ragged breathing filled the silence. Myron looked up weakly. You came back," she whispered. Liara held her close, tears falling. "I told you I would." Evan leaned against the wall, wincing from a burn on his arm. Liara turned toward him, her voice trembling but strong. "You could have left us. Why didn't you?" He looked at her, tired but calm. "Because humans don't abandon those who trust them." Outside, the alarms had stopped. But the silence that followed was not victory. It was warning. The Serpent Court now knew who had defied them. And as the first light of dawn touched the ruined corridor, Evan said quietly, "They'll come for us." "All of them." Liara nodded, wiping her tears. "Then we'll be ready." Together they stepped into the rising light, human and alien sisters. Walking toward a war neither of them had started, but both were now willing to finish. The city of Arthan 5 awoke under a tense silence. Word of a human officer defying the Serpent Court spread like wildfire through whispered corridors, servant tunnels, and the marketplaces. Citizens who had always bowed in fear now exchanged nervous glances. The seeds of rebellion were planted. Evan Cross moved carefully through the palace gardens with Liara and her sister Myron. Both girls were exhausted, but their determination shone brighter than ever. Behind them, the glow of emergency lights painted the marble paths red, casting long shadows. Every step carried danger. "We can't fight them alone," Liara whispered, her voice tight. "There are too many guards. Too much power." Evan shook his head. "Humans don't fight alone either. But sometimes courage spreads faster than fear." He scanned the corridors. From hidden vantage points, he could see servants peeking from windows and doorways. Their faces were pale, but their eyes were no longer empty. They were watching, waiting. The first spark came from a small act of defiance. A guard, usually stern and loyal to the court, lowered his weapon as he passed a wounded civilian. Another followed suit. One by one, ordinary citizens and servants began to hesitate, whispering to each other, emboldened by the rumor of a human standing up. Liara gasped. "They're listening to you?" Evan smiled faintly. "Not to me, to what I represent. Humanity doesn't surrender when the odds are against them. People remember that." The three of them moved to the palace square. It was empty now, a stage of pale stone bathed in moonlight. Suddenly, from the shadows, figures emerged, maids, guards, and common citizens. They carried tools, small weapons, even cooking knives, but their hands were steady. They had seen enough cruelty. They had waited too long. The Serpent Court arrived moments later, armored and imposing. Their masks glinted under the moonlight, serpents coiled in silver over black. At their head was the masked commander who had confronted Evan in the lower chambers. He raised his staff, crackling with energy. "This rebellion will end tonight. Kill the human and the traitors." Evan stepped forward. "If you want to kill me, you will first have to face everyone who refuses your lies," he said, his voice calm but strong. "I am human, but I am not alone, and neither are they." Liara grabbed her sister's hand, standing beside him. Around them, hundreds of faces emerged from hiding. Slaves, citizens, and even palace staff. The humans' courage had given them hope. The ordinary aliens, inspired by that courage, realized they were not powerless. The battle began, not with weapons, but with defiance. A scream here, a shout there, the breaking of doors, and shouts of anger filled the square. Guards tried to enforce control, but hesitation spread like wildfire. Some refused to attack. Others turned their weapons inward, confronting their own commanders. Evan moved like a shadow through the chaos, protecting Liara and Myron while helping anyone in immediate danger. Every human tactic he employed, blocking, disarming, redirecting, made the alien rebels realize they could win, if only they stood together. Liara found herself beside a young guard who trembled as he held a stun baton. She grabbed his wrist. "You don't have to obey them," she said firmly. "Fight for what is right." He hesitated. Then he nodded. Together, they helped push back the court's enforcers. One by one, the elite soldiers fell or fled, confused by the unity of the citizens they had underestimated. From the shadows, the commander shouted, enraged. "Stop him! Stop the human!" Evan turned, facing the serpent-masked leader. His eyes met Liara's. "Go!" he shouted. She led the civilians and servants away through a hidden path, while Evan drew the commander's attention. Their battle became a dance of strategy, courage, and sheer will. Minutes stretched like hours. Then as dawn approached, the palace gates opened unexpectedly. More citizens inspired by the rebellion flooded in. The commander realized his forces were surrounded. He vanished into the shadows, leaving the human officer standing tall amid a crowd of liberated people. Liara approached him, eyes shining. "You did it. You led them." Evan shook his head, exhaustion lining his face. "No, we did it. You all did it. I just reminded them how strong they could be." The square filled with cheers, tears, and the first laughter many had heard in years. A human, a stranger in their world, had shown them courage, hope, and compassion, and in return they had found their own strength. For the first time, the palace didn't feel like a cage. It felt alive with possibility, and far above, hidden in the upper towers, eyes of the Serpent Court watched silently. They had been defeated tonight, but this was only the beginning. Evan turned to Liara and Myron. "Tomorrow we make sure no one ever fears them again." Liara smiled, gripping his arm. "Then we fight together." And for the first time, the humans and aliens of Arthan 5 knew that courage, compassion, and unity could change even the darkest empire. The first rays of dawn painted the palace in gold and silver. Smoke from the rebellion's fires drifted over the city, curling around towers and spires like ghosts. For the first time in years, the people of Arthan 5 moved freely, their steps cautious but proud. Word of the human officer and the two alien sisters spread across the streets. In homes, markets, and servant corridors, whispers carried a single truth. Humans could be brave, and even the smallest act of courage could change everything. Evan Cross stood in the palace courtyard, exhausted but alive. His uniform was torn, scorched in places, and streaked with blood, but his eyes were steady. Liara and Myron stood beside him, their hands clasped tightly, their expressions a mixture of awe and relief. Around them, citizens and palace staff cheered quietly, afraid of drawing attention but unable to hide their joy. Then, the sky above shimmered. A single beam of pale light cut through the morning mist, and the massive doors of the Queen's chamber opened. A figure emerged, tall and regal, her presence commanding yet calm. The Queen of Arthan 5, known for her icy demeanor and sharp mind, stepped forward. Her silver robes caught the sunlight, flowing like liquid metal. Behind her, the palace council members looked uneasy, their masks of authority slipping. Evan straightened. "Your Majesty," he said respectfully, though his voice carried a quiet strength that even the court could not ignore. The Queen stopped in the center of the courtyard. Her eyes, pale like frozen lakes, scanned the crowd, finally resting on Evan. She spoke, her voice low but echoing over the plaza. "Captain Cross, human, you have survived what none of my kind could endure. You have faced the Serpent Court, defied them, and protected those who could not defend themselves." Evan bowed slightly. "I did what anyone would do, Your Majesty. I only helped those who were in danger." The Queen's lips curved into a faint, unreadable smile. "That is exactly why you are exceptional. You see, humans are often underestimated here. The Serpent Court wanted to test your nature, your loyalty, your choices. The maids who entered your quarters were volunteers. They were observing. Every move you made was watched, recorded, and judged," Liara gasped, stepping forward. "You mean everything? The guards, the alarms, the chaos?" The Queen nodded. "Yes. The court wanted to see if a human would act selfishly, or if he would choose compassion, honor, and courage over fear and convenience." Evan felt the weight of her words. "So this rebellion, all the risk, it was part of the test?" "In part," the Queen said, her voice softer now. "But you made it real. You did not act for reward or recognition. You acted because it was the right thing to do. You have reminded all of us what courage truly is." Around the courtyard, citizens whispered, their eyes widening. The Serpent Court's power had been broken not by weapons but by one human's bravery and the courage it inspired in others. Liara stepped beside Evan, her golden eyes shining with emotion. "You risked everything for us," she whispered. Evan shook his head. "I risked nothing that I couldn't face. But you all had to trust me. That was the hardest part." The Queen raised her hand, and a beam of light touched the palace gates. Guards and council members froze in place, unable to move. The Queen looked at Evan once more. "From this day forward, humanity will have a place among our stars. You have earned it, not with words, not with allegiance, but with the proof of your heart." A cheer erupted louder this time. Citizens, servants, and even former guards lifted their voices in celebration. Liara grabbed her sister's hand, tears streaming down her face. "We are free," she whispered. Evan watched as the Queen returned to the palace steps, her expression unreadable yet respectful. In that moment, he realized something profound. Courage, compassion, and unity could overcome even centuries of fear and oppression. Liara turned to him, smiling. "You changed everything," she said softly. Evan smiled back, exhaustion melting into satisfaction. "No, we changed everything. Together." Above them, the twin moons of Arthan V hung quietly in the sky. Their light bathed the city in a silver glow, a symbol of hope, new beginnings, and the promise that humans, though strangers in this world, could inspire greatness, loyalty, and trust in even the most alien hearts. And far beyond the city, across the stars, news would travel of the human who had defied fear, the alien sisters who had trusted him, and a world that would never underestimate humanity again. The rebellion was over. The lesson was clear, and the universe for the first time truly believed in humans.